Welcome to
4Kids Flashback. Hello, good afternoon, good evening, good middle of the night. I don't know when you're listening. It could be 2 a.m. and this is what you do. But hi, I'm Tara Sands.
and I'm Steve Yurko, and I'm hoping you're maybe I'm hoping you're sleeping okay. If you're up at 2 a.m. and
Maybe they work the night shift or they're a cross-country truck driver and this is what is keeping them awake at 2 a.m. It's you.
I would love to hear a trucker's opinions on 4Kids shows, if that's the case.
We don't know. Yeah. If you're a trucker and you listen, give us a shout out. Welcome to this episode with where we interviewed Ted Lewis.
That's right.
The actor interviews are particularly fun for me because they're my friends.
Mm-hmm. And for me, I'm like, cool. It's all these voices that I've heard throughout so many games and shows that I could recite so much lines of dialogue from. Like with Ted, Ted, I think of Giovanni from Pokemon, but I also think of him as the announcer from Pokemon Stadium. So
yeah.
And my friends and I still recite some of those.
You do?
Yeah,
like
those,
what? Give me you don't have to do the voice, but what's an example of some of the stuff that he said?
This is how nerdy it gets. In Tabletop RP, if one of the players is taking too long to take their turn, my game master will often say, "What's the matter, trainer?" Which is the audio clip.
So that was Ted.
Yeah, if you leave your control, if you leave your controller idle, if you don't make a decision during that game, he'll say that. If we're victorious, we'll often say, "And there goes the battle." And that's all Ted.
Wow.
Yeah.
You did not bring up this geeky
I
thing
didn't.
when we recorded the interview, and now I feel like I want to call
because to me, to be honest, I'm a little shy, and I'm like, these people hear this. I don't know. It's like, who wants to hear? And then you said this line and this, but
what's that? Yeah, I get it.
My regret is not telling Ted. I'm like, a lot of things you said, my friends and I, quote to this very day. It's
well, hopefully he'll hear this, and yeah. Well, because again, I think you are someone who works in the industry and knows what goes into all of this stuff. So it is, not that it ever bothers me to hear that, but I think you do it. You tell people in a way where it's not weird and
thank you.
They can accept
I think
yeah.
It's a learning. It was a learning process, maybe for sure. But I think I've always. I like to think these are people too. These aren't just characters. These aren't just voices. But
but that's why we're here.
Yeah, I want to. I love hearing from the people. It's especially with stuff that like resonated so much with me. But I really like hearing that perspective. And Ted has a lot of great anecdotes and stories.
Yeah, and he also wrote for the shows, which gave him a different insight into all of this. You know what? I'm going to stop talking about Ted. Because he's going to speak for himself. But before we get to the interview, we should tell people about us.
Sure.
About the websites they can go to follow the show and
absolutely.
all that.
You could find us simply at 4kidsflashback.com. That's the number 4 when you're typing that out. And check us out over at Patreon at patreon.com/4kidsflashback. Same thing with the number 4.
You can become a patron
yes.
of the podcast and you'll get episodes early and ad-free and also some bonus content that we're working on. And yeah.
And we appreciate, anyone who's willing to fork over some cash for us.
So we'll let Ted take it away, and then we'll be back to outro this for some inside lingo. Here's Ted. Our guest today was both a performer and a writer at 4Kids. Some of his roles include Jack Atlas and Bakura in Yu-Gi-Oh!, Sir Dumpling in Fighting Foodons, Giovanni and Tracy in Pokémon, the Stadium Announcer in Pokémon Stadium, but most importantly, And the reason he insists that I call him Your Highness, he voiced King Dedede and Escargoon in Kirby right back at ya. He looks and smells like royalty. Hello, Tedward Penelope Lewis.
Hello, Tara Bulbasands. How are you?
We can just make up names for each other all day. I
Yeah, let's.
I didn't even remember that you were royalty when I put this shirt on today.
Oh my God, the Regal Beagle.
Yeah, but now it's in your honor.
Amazing from Three's Company, right?
That's it. Well,
oh my God,
thank you for talking to us, Ted. Steve is in
Absolutely.
the house. What up, Steve?
Yes,
we're all very excited. Very excited. To stroll gingerly down memory lane.
Gingerly is the key word.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to ask you questions that even after I've known you all this time that I don't really know how you ended up working at 4Kids in the first place.
Well, I knew that was going to be one of your questions, actually. The other day, I remember actually thinking, like, God, do I remember that? I don't know. I think it probably started with getting on Pokémon. And I think probably the first gig that I had at 4Kids was probably Yu-Gi-Oh! I think.
Before
that was really the thing. No. Yu-Gi-Oh! Was after, because Pokemon started around, I want to say 97, 98 or something. And Yu-Gi-Oh! I think was the early 2000s.
Right, but wait. Stop.
Yeah.
Oh my
God. Do I have that wrong?
Ted, stop No, I'm just kidding.
What?
A second. Had you done any voiceover work before 4Kids?
Before 4Kids, yes.
Okay.
Yes, I
Let's start
is that
there.
What your question was?
No,
okay.
It wasn't.
Okay.
But I realized, you know what? I'm not that good at this. So let's rephrase it.
Well, that's okay. That's all right. My voiceover work before 4Kids, it was strange. So should I tell you the story of like how I got in touch with the first person that cast me?
Sure.
Should I tell you that story?
If it's a good story.
It's a really interesting little story. I was working.
I'll be the judge of that.
Yes, you will. Yes, you will. Steve, press pause. No, because this is a doozy. No, I was working at a record store. My day job was working at a place called HMV, which was on 72nd Street and Broadway. And I was working in the basement, which was the video department. And there was this guy that was roaming around looking at what was then, we had a thing called laser discs back in the olden times, before DVDs and Blu-rays and all that stuff, and before streaming, my little children. And so I saw this guy, and he looked really familiar to me. And I'm like, what do I know him from? How do I know him? And I'm not normally the kind of a person who would go up to someone and ask them. I would just be like, well, he's probably, I probably know him maybe from a temp job or from maybe he was on TV or something. I don't know, but I never ask. But this one time I did. And I walked up to this guy and I said, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but do I know you from somewhere? Are you an actor? And he said, yes, I am an actor. And I said, your face looks so familiar to me. And he ended up saying, well, it was a guy named Bill Timoney, who you probably have met, Tara, right? And I realized that he had played a role on All My Children in the 80s. And my sisters used to watch that show, and I would occasionally watch it with them. And I was like, that's it. Oh my gosh, and I start talking to him, and he said, are you an actor? And I said, yeah, I am. And he's just kind of asking me all these questions. I didn't realize that he was actually asking all of this stuff to get me to talk so that he could get a feel for my voice, right?
Oh.
So one of the other guys that worked in the department also worked for Central Park Media and had just recently said to me, have you ever thought of doing voiceover? And I was like, well, I never thought of it, but I'm certainly not against it. I would definitely do it. And he said, well, give me your resume. And and I'm great. So I did. And that was like maybe 2 weeks or so prior to this. Huh. So I mentioned this guy's name to Bill, and he said, oh, sure, I know him. And he said, your resume is probably on my desk right now because I'm actually casting this show. And it was a show called Record of Lodos War. Which was one of the straight-to-video ones. I think we're talking 94 or something.
Yeah, I know Lisa's in that one, yeah.
Yes, probably. And so it was my very first audition, and I booked it. and I mean that's very rare, and I never had good luck like that after
Yeah.
that point. But it was kind of amazing that I booked it. So really, it was that started it, and then from there, through meeting, being recommended and this, that, whatever to other stuff. So then I remember working on Here is Greenwood, which was another straight to video, which was directed by Michael Hegney, who of course worked at 4Kids. And so I got to know Michael at that point. And then from then on, I just did various little projects. And then I think when Yu-Gi-Oh! Started, I think I was kind of in the pool with all the rest of us kids at that time that were auditioning for stuff and doing stuff. And so I think Yu-Gi-Oh! Was the first thing that I got into.
So Giovanni and Tracy had not appeared yet on Pokemon, so Yu-Gi-Oh! Was technically...
No. Giovanni had appeared, because I think Giovanni's been on since the very beginning. Tracy, I think, was something like season 3 or 4. And I can't remember whether that season was before or after the beginning.
I know it's all one big
Yu-Gi-Oh!
episode at this point.
It is.
Do you guys?
Yeah,
you guys
tell
want
us.
a child to
please, youngster,
intervene here?
My fine youngster. Go ahead.
Pokemon, yeah, definitely preceded Yu-Gi-Oh! Of course. Giovanni, like you were in the very early episodes of Pokemon, so that's 98. Same with like Giovanni, following, I think probably, within that recording of like 98, you're definitely on that. Tracy, I think that's like season 2, so that was 99.
Okay, so I had done
This is
Yu-Gi-Oh!
Your life, Ted.
That's right. Yes.
No, it's
not to tell your story for you, but I'm
great.
here
when I write my autobiography, Steve, you're going to be the one I call to ask any detailed questions.
Who's going to play you in the movie, though? More importantly.
Oh my, Brad Pitt, maybe Ryan Gosling. I don't know.
One of the Ryans. One of the Ryans.
Jake Gyllenhaal. No, actually, that was the answer to who do you fantasize about constantly? No, I'm kidding. Not really.
Womp,
Not really. Womp
womp. Ted, you just turned this all blue. No,
I did. Right?
God,
it's like a hentai. Is that what those are called? Hentais, the X-rated porn, which I never did. But I'm apparently gearing up for one right now. I don't know what just
You'll
happened.
You'll be cast in one immediately.
I think so.
Do you actually remember auditioning for Pokemon or Yu-Gi-Oh? Because I don't.
You know what? I do remember, yes, because I remember I auditioned for Pokemon and first heard about it at Jim Malone's studio.
Lower East Side,
Yes, on the Lower East Side. And I think, because I think he was directing some of the early ones. So I think he mentioned it to me, and I said, "Oh, yeah, that sounds fun. Yeah, I'd love to." I mean, really, it was kind of this thing of, "Oh, well, here's this new show coming up, and there's a chance to audition." So I was like, "Great,
Yeah, we were actors in New York. We did anything.
Anything.
Put in our path. Yeah.
Of course. And then I think with Yu-Gi-Oh! It was basically the same. It was just like, here's another chance to audition, and I don't remember. Whether I auditioned for. No, I probably did audition for more than just Bakura. I think we all probably auditioned for various roles,
right, and didn't
they
get
kind
them.
of determined, and determined which ones we were best for. So I don't really remember exactly what the audition was like, but
I wish I could remember it. I just have So you also played some of the actual Pokemon, right?
Yes, for periods of time.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, yes, I do.
Okay, let's hear.
I can remember, and it's I think it's apparently kind of a classic episode from early on, which was the one that had Gengar and Ghastly and Haunter. And because I still remember, because I did those 3, and it was like a haunted house kind of episode, I think. And I remember doing those 3, and I remember Michael Hegney directing, and I also remember too. I don't know if any of the other Pokemon folks that have been with the show since way back remember, there was a studio called Buttons Sound.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've talked about Buttons. Yeah,
and I think that's where we started recording it. I think that was the early, and that's my memory of
Because
doing
Taj
that
was
episode.
building their studio at that point.
That's correct. That's right. Yeah. So yeah, I remember doing, and then I think I did Snorlax for a bit, uh, and I I'm sure I did other ones, but
You
those are the
must
ones
have.
I think Gengar and Snorlax are probably the ones that that are
I'm
the best known.
always kicking myself for not keeping a list. Like it
I
did
know,
not
right?
even occur to me to keep.
No, of
Yeah.
course not.
Mm-mm. We
No.
were so naive, Ted. We were so young and naive.
Listen, well, I mean, I uh, can I talk about having originated a particular role in the show?
Oh,
And
I
then
would
it was
love you to. I didn't know
okay,
if you
great.
wanted to talk about it or not.
No, it's fine because it's great. So I had played James of Team Rocket fame for the first about 7 or so episodes,
Mm-hmm.
and I had a friend in Kentucky who had lived for years in New York. Maybe still did at the time, but she was in Kentucky for the summer, and she was an actress, but she was also a playwright, and she had written this really hilarious musical parody adaptation of Gone with the Wind. I think that's what I first did with her. And she had this really, a couple of really fun roles for me to do. And I was like, oh, great. It's a chance to leave town and to do theater.
Mm-hmm.
Great. And if I had, any offers for theater, I would always take that over voiceover stuff just because I really wanted to be on stage.
Right.
And so she offered that to me and I said, great. And then I was like, having just started Pokemon. And I left to do this friend's show in Kentucky, and the rest.
Sorry, I don't mean to laugh.
No, the rest. Yes, well, you should because it's hilarious. The rest is Poke history,
Right?
And my loss was Eric Stewart's game.
Well, you know what? That's so funny because when we first started, I always thought that it was intentional that Brock and Misty, those characters, also played Jesse and James, and I thought, oh, that's so like symmetrical.
Yeah, I don't.
But no, that was not the
apparently
point.
not. No, because I was James, and then I wasn't. But that was why I left. I left to do theater, and the rest is there. You go. Yeah.
That's. I didn't know the details of that. Wow.
Yeah.
Kentucky? Oh boy.
Yeah. It was a really cute little town.
Sorry to anyone who lives in Kentucky. It's just not a state I think of in terms of theater. I think of them for other things.
She was workshopping her shows there because she was from there, and there was a little theater that she had done shows with in community theater, and so they gave her this cute little space to kind of workshop her shows. And so that was it. But I was like, oh, it's a chance to do a really fun show.
Yeah.
And that's preferable just to, standing in a booth and, going
gang. But like 90% of us were theater actors, and that was our priority. That was
absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, I always used to, I would do theater for free at night, and these jobs would pay my bill, like voiceover jobs, mostly commercials, would pay the bills, and then
absolutely.
So I could go do, some off Broadway play and feel fulfilled.
Yep. But it certainly kept. I was able to get groceries very often with my voiceover money.
Right.
Not that it was a huge amount. I assure you, but certainly for someone who was in his late 20s. And never had any money. Right. I was like, oh, great. I can do this, this gig and get, a couple of hundred or, if not even less sometimes. And that was fine too.
Right. So you mentioned working at the record store. What were some of your other day jobs during that time?
Oh, gosh. What did I do? I was at that record store for quite a bit of time. I was also, I think the first day job I had was at a Barnes & Noble before they became like Barnes & Noble Superstore. There was a little Barnes & Noble on 83rd and Broadway. So I was there. And I also did a lot of temp jobs. But back then, of course, you could get a temp job just by walking in the room.
Yeah.
Nowadays, apparently, you have to you go through 3 interviews.
It's competitive, I've heard.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. I'm just like, as soon as I heard that, I'm like, well, I'm out because I don't have a degree. I'm a huge dummy. I'm like, nope, I'm gone.
I can't type at all.
No,
I remember
I can type. That's the one thing I can do. I can type and I can answer phones. But that's about it. So,
but now you would answer them as Gengar.
Oh, yes. Gengar, can I help you? You're welcome. I hope hopefully people will keep that as a little sample.
Well, actually,
And
that's something I did want to talk about. Two things. Is that when we say we played a Pokemon, like when I go to a convention, I really only mention the Pokemon that I know I played for a significant amount of time, because often we'd be in the booth and we would just cover someone else's Pokemon. Like it was very
that's exactly what
haphazard.
happened.
Yeah.
That's right. Because I don't know, I don't remember how long I did Gengar or Snorlax. I know I did them for a couple of years. And, I know I've shared them with, I shared them with Mark Thompson. I probably shared them with some other people too.
Yeah.
So, yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then I don't know if you ever heard this, but I was told once that if our Pokemon had less than 10 reactions, like sounds in an episode, they had a bank of our voices that they would just throw into the episode.
I didn't know that. Wow.
Again, we'll try to confirm that, but yeah.
Yeah. I had no idea.
Yeah.
I think I probably thought at one point too, like, why are they having us go in to do these voices? They've got us doing them, and I guess because it's different inflections.
Because also the mouth flap is different amounts of lip flap.
Sure, yeah, I guess so. Yep, of course. Mm-hmm.
I want to talk about your transition to being a writer, Ted.
Oh,
let's talk about your days writing at Fort. Grab your box of tissues.
Yes,
we're gonna get
ready.
Sad and weepy.
It's gonna get emotional. I think what was happening was I think I may have just come back from a summer job, or like one of my temp jobs ended or something, and I was kind of looking for the next day job, and I knew at that point. And this was probably, I'm thinking around 2002, 2003, when I kind of joined the staff,
Mm-hmm.
I saw that there were some actors that were starting to direct. And I thought, I wonder if I could do that. And I wonder if I could talk to someone about getting that gig. So I actually talked to Michael Hagney. And I remember Michael saying, well, the thing we don't need right now is directors. I think we're okay with directors, but we do need writers. Is that something you'd be interested in doing? And I said, yeah. And so I think he probably gave me, I'm not even sure what the first show was that I wrote for, because I'm not even sure if I started writing Kirby right out of the box, or the Fox box, as it were. Yes, or if it was another script given to me kind of as a test or whatever. But apparently I passed. And so I started writing, and I think I wrote for them for like, I don't know, about 3 years, something like that.
Okay, let's rewind.
Yes.
So when the process of writing for an anime, you get and stop me if I'm wrong. You get a very crude translation first of all, and then you get a VHS tape. Like what?
Yes, back then. Actually, I think by that point it was a CD or a DVD. Okay. I think.
No, there's no way.
No,
there's no way.
Let me think. No, we'd have a movie file at that point. We already had movie files. I think my memory is that there were times where I would be writing from home occasionally, but I think I used a movie file then too. So I think I might be remembering it wrong. Did you have to
stop and start it and count the mouth flaps? Like, was that part of it? Yeah.
Oh yeah. Because you get like you said, you get the flat translation, and then that tells you the idea of the line, and you get an idea of what the plot is, and then you have to look at the mouth flap of the character and fit your line into what they're doing. So you have to and I learned early on that I couldn't just say the line in my head, but I had to actually say the line, because there's a difference. Like it won't match if you're just saying it in your head.
Or in the character's voice, because like every character talks at a different pace.
That's right. So you had to kind of know. Well, not necessarily, because I still do this kind of adaptation work.
Oh.
And yes, for a company called 3Beep, and and so there are a lot of shows that I wrote before hearing or watching episodes or anything like that. So yeah, I think it was just about kind of watching the flap and having an idea of the character, and that the energy of a character and all that stuff. But yeah, it's time
So
consuming.
you don't even have the luxury of being able to hear the character in your head because you're not getting necessarily. They
Sometimes
haven't been cast,
it depends.
Or not old episodes.
It depends on the show. Some of the shows have been cast, or if we're talking back in 4Kids days, some were already cast. I think most of them were. So I think I had an idea as to the voice, and so that probably made it easier. But it could be, and also too, like, these two were like 20-minute episodes, so they were longer episodes.
Mm-hmm.
Man, there were times where I was just like, I cannot think of anything, and you'd hit a wall. And at the time, I was still drinking soda, which I don't drink anymore. But like, I remember I would have like 3 Diet Cokes a day. Yeah, there you go.
Holding up my Diet Coke.
All right,
now.
all right.
It's embarrassing.
But yeah, I'd have, thinking that would give me a burst of energy, which might, I'd get high for 5 minutes and then I'd crash again.
Well, so I guess the question is I mean, and this is something we've been talking to the translators and stuff about, is so much stuff didn't necessarily translate to American sensibilities. So you weren't
That's right.
only trying to make a fun, entertaining show. You were adapting. Was that the toughest part? Is like if there was a joke that maybe was very focused at a Japanese audience, and suddenly you're like, how do we make this work for American kids?
We have to kind of, we'd have to come up with another joke, and sometimes it lent itself to being something where I'm like, oh yeah, we'll have him say that, that'll be funny, that works. Other times it was just like, I have no idea what to do with this, because and sometimes too, also the plots too in a lot of the shows are so, they're so, I don't necessarily want to say complex, but they don't necessarily make sense to an American audience.
Mm-hmm.
And so there would be times where I'd look at certain scripts and say, oh my God, what am I going to do with this? I have no idea what to do. And then eventually you get there, but it would be chiseling away. And certain episodes were just like, oh my God, it takes forever,
Once in a while they would, it was more for censorship issues, but once in a while they would reanimate something to make a joke or something work. Were you ever in a position to say, hey, I can't do anything with this, can you reanimate?
Yes. There would be times where, sometimes too, it was also just a flaw in the animation where you're like, is there a way you can edit this out?
Meaning what? Meaning like
sometimes there'd be like a weird little lip move that was there for no reason.
Oh,
that they just kind of
the Japanese didn't even fill the lip.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Yes. But yeah, there were times where there were some jokes that we would write, or some bits or what have you, where we needed an extra flap, and we could put a little note in and say, what was it? It was I forget what.
Rotoscoping.
Yes, that's right. So we would put like roto notes.
But was that discouraged or encouraged? Like, I'm so curious how, because I know that's a budgetary thing.
Yeah, I don't think we did it all the time, but certainly, I wouldn't be afraid to do it like, once every some odd episodes if it really needed it. It wasn't something I just kind of thought I could do all the time.
Right. I know you pick your battles, I guess. With
yes, exactly. That's right.
Do you remember like which show you were writing on first?
See, I don't know what the first script I wrote was. I don't know whether I was given a script as a kind of a test to see if it worked. It might have been Kirby. That was certainly the first show that I became a regular writer for and wrote many episodes for. So it might, and Michael was producing Kirby, so it may very well have been a Kirby episode. But that, I think, was the first show that I wrote for regularly. That was followed by Sonic X. I wrote. I was one of the writers for that, and then I had some other shows after that I wrote for. I think one was called Mew Mew Power, and Magical Do Re Mi. I think was one I wrote for. So yeah, those were the main ones that I wrote for.
You're credited on IMDb for Yu-Gi-Oh, but I don't know if that's true.
I don't remember writing any Yu-Gi-Oh episodes. I remember a guy named Dave who was the one of the writers for Yu-Gi-Oh. And I just remember like he worked so hard getting that show right. And I was kind of like, oh, thank the Lord, I don't have to write for that show, you know.
You were talking about sometimes like hitting a wall, and like I was thinking like I got to see if like the Yu-Gi-Oh thing is true, because I'd say I can't imagine having
Oh,
to make
yeah,
sure that it's a card game, and for the most part the show somewhat followed the rules of the actual
exactly.
one, so I can imagine how difficult that would have been.
And I think that's the reason why this guy had such difficulty, probably because it was just, probably had all these constant notes about like, no, it has to be this, that, whatever. And I was, that's not it. So I don't remember ever. I don't think I ever
Mhm.
did write for Yu-Gi-Oh.
Well, that's a harder show to like just do one or two scripts for.
Oh
Like that's a
yes,
show you want like two writers who do everything.
absolutely, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Because
Oof.
it's a bit too complex for someone to jump in,
Let's talk about your star turn in Kirby
Oh
and then you
sure,
writing for yourself in Kirby.
yes. Well, uh,
Do you remember the DDD auditions or
I
Escargoon or any
do.
of
I
those?
do, strangely, because I remember that I auditioned for Hagney, and I remember in both character instances him suggesting a place to aim for. And I remember with DDD, I remember him saying something like a foghorn leghorn type of thing. Do you have like a Louisiana,
Mhm.
whatever? I didn't have a Louisiana, it was just generic because, at that point,
Where did you grow up? Tell everyone where you grew up
I
then.
grew up in Bellingham, Massachusetts,
Far, far from
far, far from
Louisiana.
Louisiana, far from the bayou. And and so I think he mentioned Foghorn Leghorn. And for Escargoon, I remember him saying, "Do you have a Paul Lind?" And I was
Oh.
like, "Do I have a Paul Lind?" And I absolutely did. And so I auditioned. It might have been the first voice I used for Escargoon in the audition was that. And so I ended up getting, strangely, both roles. But yeah, yeah, and then writing for it. So, God,
I, there's a on Twitter. I guess I should call it X, but I insist on calling it Twitter.
yes.
There was a couple different threads that said like, say one nice thing about 4Kids, or one of them said like, name a redeeming quality of 4Kids, and without fail, DDD popped up so many times. People love the writing on Kirby. Like some of their favorite things are the music from 4Kids, but then there was one that just said the GOAT, Ted Lewis.
Oh my God, I'm telling you, it's so
And
weird.
I was like, Ted's mom's on Twitter?
Yeah.
Yeah. But
Thanks,
yeah, no,
Mom.
there was so much love for DDD on there, and I was like, I gotta let him
Yeah.
know.
And it's funny because on the very, very, very odd occasion where I've heard clips from that show, the voice strikes me as being kind of weird sounding. It just sounds very odd to me. Like it's not one of the. If you were to line up all of the characters that I voiced, that wouldn't be a favorite. That Escargoon would definitely. But DDD, there's
Huh.
something about my voice as DDD where I'm just like, I don't know. It's not a favorite. But
The kids love
having
it.
said that, the kids love it. So
Well, I think it's a combination of all this stuff. Like, when we watch ourselves back, we're listening to our voices and we're forgetting.
we
It's
are.
about the animation. It's about all these other. It's about his attitude. It's about so much more than
Yes.
what we're listening to, because we're just focused on ourselves and our performance and our voice.
And I just want to add too, I might be mistaken here because I wasn't the biggest Kirby fan growing up. I think it's the
That's
first
okay.
time.
We'll end this interview now.
Well, this
Sorry
is
to
awkward.
offend. Uh,
Bye-bye.
I think it's
No.
the first time that character really had a speaking voice. Might have had some grunts here or there in a video
Oh.
game. That's the first time.
Yeah, I think
So-
probably. I think you're right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But I mean, it's very similar, Tara, with when we go to these conventions and meet fans, and we're just like, oh, what I did had an impact. They're such huge fans of this,
yeah.
and for us, for so long, while we were doing the roles, we would just go, oh, it's. I'm really fortunate to have a job, but it's a job, it's a day job, and then
Right.
years later, you meet these people where you're just like, you have no idea you know.
Right, and we put our heart. Listen, we had fun, and we
Oh
took
yeah.
it, we wanted to do good work. And what I've talked to some of the other actors about is we all had training, so we
Hmm.
weren't just thrown in a booth. I actually had someone say to me, "You played Bulbasaur? I thought they just got someone who like worked in at down the hall to do that." And I said, "Oh,
How
oh
dare
gosh, well,
they?
okay." And listen,
Do you know who
not that
you're
it was,
talking to?
and not that it was the hardest job in the world,
No, but
but
still, but
like
still,
we
we took
hope
it
that we added an
seriously.
element.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think.
And I explained that like we weren't normally cast. We didn't audition for the roles of the Pokemon themselves. Like I was there doing a speaking role,
And they
and then
said,
while I was there, I did some of the Pokemon voices.
that's right.
But yeah, people don't necessarily know when they're offending you, which is one of the funny
Backhanded
things about these
compliments,
conventions.
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah, like they say things like, "Oh, I actually liked that show." Like, okay, so you're saying that basically you're the only one. like when people say things like that to you.
I had two instances recently. One was at a Yu-Gi-Oh tournament in Raleigh, North Carolina, and there were these younger kids that had been participating in the youth tournament, and they were about to get their trophies, whatever. There were about like 10 of them or so, the top 10 players, and I was standing there with the other actor that was at the tournament with me. And I remember this one kid just came up to me and he looked at me with this look on his face and he just said, "Who are you?" And I was like, "I'm Jack Atlas." And he was like, "Whatever." And then another time I remember being at my booth, and there's the banner behind me with my name and picture and all the characters, and this woman came up in this gothic cosplay outfit, and she just looked at me and paused and said, "And you are?" Okay.
I'm sorry you guys never ran into me more. I remember. Sorry, I'm putting me over for a second, but I remember at one of my earliest conventions, and it was new to me, and I didn't even think, how many of these I'm going to go to. But I remember just being in a panel, and like another voice actor was just sitting in the audience, and I'm like, "Oh my god, it's blankety blank. I should go over there and just thank them." And like I just they're not knowing, and I'm like, and
That's
then like
nice.
yeah,
That's
then like
sweet.
years later, I'm like, "Oh, I've been to so many conventions now. It's kind of like it's not that crazy that I might run into somebody." But
No.
some people just they don't have that etiquette.
The social graces,
Mhm.
yeah, they're lacking a little bit at times.
My favorite recently was somebody who came over to my table and they said, "Oh, I just spent all my money on those guys, so now I'm deciding if I want your autograph or his autograph." And he pointed to the person next to me, and I said, "Well, no pressure. Let me know what you decide." He came back and he looked at me like a couple hours later. He said, "I decided to get his." And I said, "Okay."
Thanks for letting me know what your decision
thank
was.
you. That's
You could have just moved on.
But that actually, I was thinking about this today, and I'm glad you're here to talk to about it. I love the anonymity of being a voice actor, but once in a while, I would like the perks of being an on-camera actor, like when people recognize you and maybe you something. You get a nice surprise, an upgrade on the flight, and I thought if the equivalent would be if I walked around in a Bulbasaur mask. Like, that would... Imagine how many people would recognize us if we had a mask of our character and how much differently we'd be treated.
I'm just thinking about how I'd be really warm.
You're thinking about the sweat?
Yeah, there'd be sweat issues.
I'd be worried you're about to rob a bank or something.
Yeah, yes.
Well, no, I'm not saying... Oh, I don't mean an actual mask, but I'm just saying okay, and this is what I mean. The popularity of these shows we worked on.
Yeah.
I mean, like, it would be like walking around with Mickey Mouse. I mean, it's
pretty
the
insane.
Recognition would be insane. Yeah.
In this little universe of having worked on these shows, it's incredible. We have our own little slice of fame, but it's a very particular slice.
It's
and
a niche slice.
It's a niche slice. But yeah, it would be nice to. I'd love to get a little more legroom on the flights. Let me tell you.
Well, there are voice actors who do figure out ways to work it into conversations. Like I've seen them do it. Like,
Really?
oh, does your kid like and I don't have the balls to do that. I'm too. Yeah, no. But I've watched it happen, and I'm like, good for you guys. If that's they bring around headshots to sign, and they know they can get some perks. But bringing it up is the weirdest thing. Like
I'd be afraid. Knowing my history, I'd be afraid that the kid would be like, no. And I'd be like, well, never mind. Later.
Yeah, I had that happen. My cousin's kid was like in kindergarten, and I was bringing him something to eat. Like I was running over and helping out with something. And he and his friends were trading Pokemon cards. And I said, and I brought him I think it was a donut. I don't know. And I said, actually, that would be too on the nose if it was a jelly donut. But I was bringing him something. And I said to him and his friends, I go, I actually work on the show. Do you watch the show? And they go, no, it's for babies. I thought I was going to give him some street cred, but they were into the cards.
Man. Yes, right.
Yeah,
I was in the UK recently because I went to a convention in Manchester, and the first Uber that I got into, getting out of the train station, and it was the guy had a Pokemon thing hanging in his around the mirror, and I was like, oh, are you a Pokemon fan? I was all ready to say, I played Giovanni and Gengar and various other roles. And the guy looked at me, he's like, actually, this is my buddy's cab, and I'm driving it for him for a while. I was like, oh, I was just wondering because great.
Denied.
So take a left coming up here and throw me out.
I'm so shy that even like I was at Trader Joe's and I had a Pokemon bag that someone had given me. It was so cute. And the cashiers, she started showing it to the other cashiers. Like, she's like, look how cute this is. And even at that point, I was too shy to say anything.
Right.
And meanwhile, I'm at Trader Joe's like every day. I should really getting good there.
I'm the same. It's a funny thing. I was not one of those people that was born to self-promote.
No, me either. That's why this podcast will have no promotion.
None whatsoever. Great. And that's okay with me.
So did you like the writing? It sounds like you're still doing it, so you must have taken to it pretty quickly.
Well, I did. It was also tough because writing long scripts is always a little harder. For instance, the ones that I've been writing recently are 5-minute scripts, and a lot of them are geared to fairly young kids. So there isn't as much pressure to be like to kind of be super witty or funny or edgy.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes that can take some of the pressure off. But doing some of the longer episodes back in the day, that could be tough. But that said, it was a skill that I developed, and it's a skill that not everyone has because it's this kind of weird niche thing. Mm-hmm. And so since I was able to learn it at that time, every now and then if I see an opportunity, I'm like, yeah, I'll do some more adapting because I can do it, and it's better than
a desk. Did you have like a desk, an official space at that office?
I had a cubicle because there was a section where there were a bunch of cubicles, and all the cubicles were surrounded by a lot of the producers, and they had offices. So there was Hagney, there was a guy named John Kalish that was near my desk, a couple of the other guys too, and then they shifted things around a little bit, and then I shared an office right next to Norman's actually.
Okay, you're in an office. Okay,
yes,
that's fancy.
And then so with 2 other writers, so I was actually in an office, and I think I was probably in each space for a year and a half, 2 years or something like that. I can't remember how long, whether I wrote for 3 or 4 years. I don't know.
Okay. Do you remember all the expansion? We were talking to someone today about how when 4Kids first went into that space, they had like a few desks, a few offices, and then after a few years, they took over.
Oh, yeah.
And were knocking down walls. And
yeah. I remember, I think that I can remember them doing something with the break room. Like the break room used to be a certain way, and then all of a sudden there was more room in the break room, and then building new studios.
Mm-hmm.
I forget how many they started with, but I definitely remember them setting up new studios. But yeah, all of a sudden it was, during the boom, during the boom years of Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh in particular. I remember there were, lots of people and lots
Mm-hmm.
of like
Suddenly,
like
yeah.
six studios or something like that, maybe.
Well, I always knew that they must have not realized how many studios they needed because there was that one studio where you had to walk through it to get to the other studio.
Yes,
So
yes.
whoever was recording had to stop recording.
Yep, yep.
It was so
And you'd have to
awkward.
step back and let them pass through.
It was
Yes,
so
that's
weird.
right. That's right. Yep, yep.
I've never seen that anywhere else. It was so funny.
Yep, yep.
It was like you were walking across a stage. It was so uncomfortable. Yeah.
Exactly. Yep. You're like, excuse me, with their coffee or tea or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good planning.
I would like to ask, because I think, like 4Kids is infamous for having the 4Kids style of adapting anime, but I'm curious if you felt like there was like a big difference between writing the scripts for Kirby as there were to like writing for Sonic.
I don't think there was a huge difference. I think the only factors that might have made any difference were just the simple factor that they were two different shows, and also too that was really the only factor because Michael Hagney produced both of those, so really he was really on top of keeping the style of the show consistent in terms of the scripts and that kind of thing. So really, I think it was just in terms of it being a different show. So we'd kind of stick with whatever the style was of the show, and Hagney would kind of keep things consistent.
As an actor, you also worked on some of the original shows that 4Kids fully produced, all the animation and all that.
Yep.
Did you have a preference for recording that animation as opposed to dubbing anime?
Well, I didn't do many of the shows that were what were they? What is it called? Prelay, I think.
Prelay,
right?
yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
So the only one that I remember doing was Turtles. And I played the Ultimate Ninja, which is an oddly named character because the Ultimate Ninja only had about 2 episodes. But I'm not bitter. But
he wasn't even a turtle.
No, let's face it, he wasn't. He was a shadowy figure. Who knows what the hell he was? But yeah, so I didn't do many of the prelay shows, but I do remember being in the booth with Greg Abbey and Wayne Grayson. And of course, they're my buddies, so that was fun. So I really enjoyed that because it's just much more spontaneous.
Yeah,
it's almost like you're doing a radio show or something. I mean, it's a lot more freeing, and you're not so, because of course when you're dubbing, to pre-existing animation, you've got to be kind of watching, and you've got to match the, even if the writing is good and what have you, you're still having to look and make sure you fit the lip flap and all that. So doing the prelay shows, that was great because you just didn't have to deal with that, and you could just kind of talk and respond to your fellow actors.
Right.
So yeah, I wish I had done more of them.
Yeah, it's tricky. Sometimes if I'm in a time in my life when I'm doing a lot of anime and then I suddenly do go to another show like that, I forget that I'm allowed to go off the page a little bit.
Right.
And I have to remind myself, oh, Tara, different mode.
Yeah. You can improvise a little bit, within certain constraints and whatever, and you can be a little freer. But yeah, it's nice, but I didn't do it as much as I would have liked.
Yeah, same.
You're doing a lot more conventions, and specifically you're showing up at Yu-Gi-Oh events. I'm curious if if you ever get a lot of feedback about your time as Bakura, because from my experience, very popular character. Dare I say it, I'll speak for some people, say maybe an awakening for some folks.
It could be, who knows?
I'm curious your thoughts on the role, because he's a side character, but like he's almost like the one reoccurring villain throughout the show, and then eventually is one of the like last antagonists.
Yeah, and Bakura, actually, I would say Bakura and maybe Giovanni as well, from Pokemon, but in terms of Yu-Gi-Oh, Bakura and Jack Atlas, who of course was 5Ds, they're both like major at the conventions. I mean, those are two of the characters that people really love. And Bakura was just fun because I can't even remember when I auditioned for the role whether or not they knew that he was going to have the dark side, the Yami Bakura side. I can't remember whether that was already. I don't know. Maybe they probably knew that already, but I'm not sure if I knew when I started it. So I just thought he was going to be this kind of gentle little friend of theirs from school who came from another school. And so it was kind of fun to do the dark side too, and that made things
very bold.
Yeah,
if that wasn't part of like the audition.
Yeah.
Because when it came to you,
it's
delivered.
Interesting, yeah, because I really don't remember whether that was a part of the audition. My memory says that it wasn't. My memory says that it was just regular little gentle Bakura. I could be wrong again because I'm getting up there.
I don't think they would have had enough episodes ahead.
I don't think so. Yeah. So I think they were kind of like, can you do? I think by that point though, I think they kind of knew what each actor could do. So I think when that probably came up, they probably said, "Oh, I think Ted is okay with that. He can handle that." But yeah. I don't think it was. I knew it at first. I thought it was just, this cute little guy with white hair.
Well, that's a good point too. Is that there were probably less than 30 of us doing all of these roles, so they knew our talent, our skill set is the right word. So, part of me is like, oh, it's strange that they didn't go and do more casting. But then it was like, you know what? Ted is a safe bet. We know whatever happens to this character, we know he's going to be able to handle it. So it was a safety thing, I think, maybe in some ways too.
Oh, I think so. I think they knew all of us. I think they knew all of our strengths, and we had all done. Of course, in Yu-Gi-Oh being the first thing that they did, might have been. They might not have had as many shows to kind of look back on to judge what we could or couldn't do. But even having done Pokemon, I think they were by that point familiar enough with all of us to kind of say, oh yeah, that that'd be good for let's have Tara audition for that, let's have Ted audition for this or whatever. So yeah, it was this little pool of actors, young hungry hopefuls. And I'm still hungry and hopeful. That's 2 out of 3 aren't bad,
That's true. Ted and I might have had too much fun.
Yes.
Back in the day. It's entirely possible we overdid the fun.
Went to far too many bars, and let me tell you, people, Tara Sands,
irresponsibly.
Tara Sands can put it away. I tell you.
I really can't.
No, not at all. I'm totally joking.
That was true.
I'm totally joking. No.
This feels like a very unique New York thing. Wow, I realized I just said the tongue twister there, but
unique New York.
Yeah, that feels like one of the great things like with some of the interviews we've been having. It's just like hearing how New York is like such a part of like the experience of your time there.
Sure.
And,
yeah.
Well, listen, when you're in New York in your 20s, you inevitably have friends in bands. And with Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh specifically, Eric Stewart was in a band, Jim Malone was in a band, and you have to go support your friends. So It was just this very built-in way for us all to see each other. There were some official 4Kids parties.
Oh,
but
yeah.
not many. We made our own fun a lot of the
absolutely.
time. Yeah.
But also too, there was a time when 4Kids threw some great parties. I remember a couple of really, really fun Christmas parties.
Mm-hmm. Halloween parties. I remember
parties,
those.
Yes.
And there was a couch that a lot of people passed out on.
Yes, yep. And then there were the rap parties, and some of the earlier rap parties, they had a lot of great food and an open bar. Some of the later rap parties, they had chips and an open bar, and so we couldn't really load up on the food and then drink. So we'd have a couple of pretzels and then vomit all over each other by the end.
Was this a common thing for like a dub would finish its run and there would be a rap party?
Yeah, like for the last day when they were done.
I don't remember that.
Yeah, I'm not sure that they did it for every single show,
No, there was
but they
no
were
way.
certainly.
Yeah.
I think it was determined by whomever was directing or producing the show, and they'd say, "Oh, it's the end of whatever show. Let's go all meet at a bar." And it wasn't necessarily a 4 Kids
Like,
sanctioned
right.
event.
Hmm.
It
Right.
would be like,
That's what I
all
more
of us.
remember.
Exactly. Yeah.
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 But it was great. Again, I mean, I think it was also the age that we were. We were,
Mhm.
most of us didn't have kids yet or,
Oh,
spouses. So we were available to hang out, and New York made it easy to hang out.
of
Whereas,
course. And we
and,
all wanted to.
Hmm.
What
we
what
all
what better
actually liked each other.
Well, yeah, exactly. And what better thing to do when you're in your late 20s than to go out with your friends and get completely trashed?
Early 20s. Yeah. Let's
Early.
early, yeah.
Oh, you were early 20s. That's right. Yes, you were a youngster. Yeah, and get completely, fucking trashed. Can I say that word
Yeah.
on this
You
podcast?
absolutely can say that. We encourage that.
Yes. So yeah,
But we always got to work the next day, and we always
did.
dubbed
It's
professionally.
it's incredible when I look back at my 20s and at all of the temp jobs that I had where I would be out, whether it was 4 Kids or even doing a play or something, where I'd be out until 3, sometimes 4 in the morning, and I'd have to get up and be at a temp job at 9 a.m. And I'd be up at like 7 o'clock ironing my shirt, and like it was crazy.
How do you do that?
I don't know.
Well, people are always even surprised that we all had all these other jobs. Like, they're like, but you were on Pokemon or you were on Yu-Gi-Oh!
Right,
And I'm like,
right.
we all had like 80 jobs. Because New York
Absolutely.
ain't cheap. Yeah.
Nope. Yeah. We all had tons of little side gigs, whether it was, dog walking or working at a record store or nannying. I certainly met a lot of people back then. I'm not sure if it's for kids.
A lot of nannies.
Like
yeah.
nannies and stuff. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I'm envious of the people in Texas and Dallas who work at Funimation and Crunchyroll, and they can go in and all see each other. Like,
Yes.
that reminds me of what it was like for us.
Yeah, because it was basically kind of like it was like an office job, but fun. Because
Right.
you'd see the same people all the time, but they were fun people, and you'd see them going in or out of the booth or whatever, and that's how we all got to know each other, was because our faces just became very familiar very quickly,
Yeah.
and then we just hang out all the time.
May I ask, it's speaking of Pokemon and of course, like the awkward transition of the Pokemon Company taking the show back. But you were one of the people that seemed to return very early on in their production. I'm curious what your story is with that.
Steve, it's funny because I think someone, I don't know whether it was someone at a convention, whether it was someone at a panel or something, but someone recently mentioned that, and wondered why I kind of had continued with that role from the beginning. I really have absolutely no idea how that happened, because really everyone was let go, and I don't know whether it couldn't have been because it was a very particularly difficult vocal, role to play. I'm sure they could have found another actor. I have no idea why I continued with it. My thought was that maybe I was out of town doing theater for a spread of time, and then I came back and they just kind of popped me back in. I don't know. It's kind of a mystery to me as to why that happened.
Did a few years pass in between?
I don't.
Or was it immediately?
I don't remember. Remember. Yeah. It's
Well,
it's really really odd, because all the main people were gone, but for some weird reason I was still there, And I've also had a little bit of guilt too, because I was kind of like, should I have said, maybe I should move on? I just didn't. It was a weird thing, and I just kind of was like, I guess I'll still do the role. I didn't, Yeah. So yeah, it's odd. I don't know how that happened.
And you've done it in recent years too, since production has moved to Los Angeles, right?
Yeah, they've had me in, there's a studio in New York, and really, I mean, I go in to do Giovanni once every like 3-4 months, maybe more. And, it's usually 2 lines. And for years I didn't have a home set up, and I'm just now really kind of getting back into the game. So I would have to go into New York, and thankfully I had, a place to stay. I had a friend who had an extra apartment, and I'd go in, and it was like for two lines, Like, okay, I'll go.
Wait, do you remember seeing so Pokemon made a musical called Pokemon Live,
Right.
and our friend Darren Dunstan played
Yes.
Giovanni. Now, did you see it? Were you with us when we went to see it?
I did not, but I hear he was terrible in the role. No,
There's
I think
a documentary
I think
where you
I've
can
seen
see some footage.
Yes, some footage, and I'm like, oh, there's young.
It's so great.
There's young Darren doing
it's so
his
cute.
Giovanni thing. Yes, that's right. I've seen clips from it, but yeah, it's so funny. He's so great. I love Darren.
He's so good. I love how many of the people we worked with became hyphenates. Like you were with the writing and Darren with directing, and
That's right.
I mean, it was a talented group. I mean, Darren was well, we'll get into this with him, but discovered from the live show.
Yes, that's right. And yeah, absolutely. And it's pretty great. It says a lot about him that, he
Let's
kind
just
of
talk about
transitioned.
Darren for the rest of the
Let's. We totally should,
We've talked about Ted too much.
Yes, he bakes. His cookies are amazing. It's like,
I remember
what can't he
Andrew
do?
also. Wait, I remember Andrew also making good cookies, and maybe I'm confusing it because I remember having like a cookie contest because I made decent chocolate chip cookies too.
Oh, I probably had a couple.
I'm
But
sure you did.
I don't remember Andrew baking, and I actually don't remember Darren baking until like 5 years ago or something, and watching him decorate stuff on Instagram, and I was just like, oh my God, they're perfect.
What can't he do?
I know, he's a perfect human.
Ugh, so sick of him.
How dare he?
All right, we're going to wrap this up. Steve, any final thoughts or questions before we let Your Highness exit?
I'm going to the Regal Beagle after for a pint.
It would only be appropriate if we did. So.
Is the whole the royalty thing? Is that just a method King DDD thing, or is there?
I just made that up.
Well, no. In the booth, I wore a crown. I had to kind of get centered, and I would tip my cans at a jaunty angle and have my crown, and so I was very method. Yeah.
Well, I wanted to call you that because in reality, you and Jim Malone are the only people allowed to call me Bulby. And listen, I don't mind it, but when other people take the liberty and do it, I'm like, that's a Ted. A Ted thing.
Only Ted.
Only
That's right.
Ted.
That's right. And if I see someone else seeing that, I'll knock them flat.
Well, it's like if someone called you Snorlax. I mean,
yeah, no. You're not allowed to do that. You don't know me. You don't know me well enough.
I have seen some actors complain on social media when they are called by their character names, and I mean, I'm not upset enough by it to make a statement. If somebody needs me to be that for that moment,
right,
that's why I'm there.
What is it hurting? Pick your battles. That's what I say.
Yeah, it's like I know who I am. I know that I'm not.
Well, exactly.
So if you need to call me that, have at it.
Exactly. It's not.
Go crazy.
It's only when they start throwing Pokeballs at you. That's
exactly.
When they try to catch me. Yeah, if they try to capture me in their Pokeball, it's awkward.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If Steve calls me Gengar, I will hunt you down.
One more time.
I will hunt you down. One more time.
You will haunt him down.
I will. I will haunter you. See what I did there?
Yeah, but then I'll be able to brag about that to my 5 friends
your
that will
Poke.
know what the hell I'm talking about.
Your Poke friends. You're like, guess who's haunting me? The actor Ted Lewis, who played Haunter.
Oh, one of the many who played Haunter.
Yeah, exactly. I think there were like 17 other actors, but one of them.
And he's one of them.
Yeah.
Oh my God. All right.
This was
I'm
fun.
getting silly now. All right. This was really fun. I will think of a lot more questions as soon as we hang up this call, but
of course,
that's why there'll be a part 2.
There will be, yes, and we can go deeper. We can, go under the surface.
I will make you cry next time. I promise.
Yes.
Yeah.
We'll lie down on the couch for.
There you go. There you go.
Yes,
We'll
that's what it'll be.
Yeah, we're going to get vulnerable next time. Part 2.
4Kids Flashback. Shit gets real.
Yes, that's the next podcast. There you go.
That's it. Thank you, Ted.
Thank you.
Mwah.
I love you. Mwah. Great to meet you, Steve.
And there goes the interview. Sorry,
there goes. Oh, is that the quote?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't even. Oh, Steve was making an announcer joke that I didn't even get, even though. Oh man,
couldn't help it.
So, what is the line in the game? There goes the
battle.
Player.
There goes the battle.
And there goes Ted Lewis. Oh, he's a sweetheart. I love that teddy bear. So something we actually recorded this interview a few weeks ago. So something I did want to clarify, because it came up in the interview, was that Ted wasn't sure why he was allowed to work on Pokemon again when so many people weren't. And I think what happened was it went to Taj Productions after 4Kids, and then it moved to a place called DoArt. And it seems that now through these interviews, we're learning that when it was at Taj, it was, I'm putting this in air quotes, not acceptable necessarily to work on the production there, but then because of maybe something called the sunset clause in our contracts. But then once it moved to DoArt, that was not the case anymore, and slowly cast members started to come back, the ones that were still living in New York. So that's the clarification so far that I've gotten. Again, this is based on memory from different people. So if that explains that for Ted, and for any of you wondering why he was able to play Giovanni, there were, I believe, a couple cast members who did do that season at Taj, and possibly were penalized for working on it by not being able to work at 4Kids. Again, this is speculation. We have not heard definitively. These are different things that we've read online and that we hope to get definitive answers to. I don't want to be a person spreading rumors, but it does seem to add up with the research that we've done in terms of whether or not they were on 4Kids shows after that. So hopefully that does answer some of the questions that came up from Ted himself, who didn't know why he was able to go back. Mm-hmm. That was a long-winded way of saying I hope that that clears that up.
That's it. And we're always looking to clear more things up.
Yeah. Yeah, and you can email us at 4kidsflashback@gmail.com if you have insights. We do appreciate that. You can email us there.
For sure. But also,
I
mean, if you're on like Apple Podcasts or something, why don't you give us a review? Give us a nice little review.
Yeah. Don't review us if it's going to be bad, but if you're going to write something nice, you should definitely give us 5 stars. Absolutely. And then write like, hey, it's fun to hang out with Steve and Tara. Like, we're hoping you feel that we keep this casual enough that, it's comfortable without being too stodgy. But that being said, we are doing our research and we are taking this seriously. So please do rate and review if you can.
We appreciate it.
Yeah. We've said it before. We'll say it again. Patreon.com/4kidsflashback. That's the number 4. Website, 4kidsflashback.com. Links to show merch with Steve's cool logo. I wear this shirt every chance I get. I even got a mug. It's super cute. It's cool. Get yourself a mug, Steve.
I might have to. I mean, I have too many, but
there's no such thing.
Not many with a podcast. I do, but I'm curious what people want to see that logo on. So.
Oh yeah, tell us if there is an item of merch that you want to see it on. We've put it on like tees and totes and a bento box, mugs, things like that. Pillow. I think I added a pillow. All right. Well, Steve, they can come back. I'll see you next week. They will hear a new interview next week. I almost said peace out, yo, but then I realized I'm not a person who can get away with saying peace out, yo. That's not, yeah. That's dated.
We'll just say we'll catch you next time.
4Kids Flashback is a production of Maji Media, hosted by Tara Sands and Steve Yurko.
Producers are Zach Logan, Tara Sands, and Steve Yurko.
For more information, go to 4kidsflashback.com. That is the number 4. And if you worked at 4Kids and have a story you want to share, please email us at 4kidsflashback@gmail.com.
You can find us on social media at 4Kids Flashback, and to listen early and ad-free, head to patreon.com/4kidsflashback. For podcast merchandise, find links on our website and Linktree.
As they say on every podcast, if you liked this show, please subscribe, rate, and review, and tell your friends, or 4. If you want to check out other Maji Media podcasts, go to maji.media. Thanks for listening.